Hello, I'm Anna Delaney. Welcome to the ISMG studio here at RSAC Conference 2026. I'm delighted to be joined by Emilee, Tellez, Field CTO, and Brad Linch, Director Enterprise Strategy at Veeam. Good to see you both.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So we're talking about how generative AI can expand cyber risk across enterprises. So let's start there. Talk about the risks. What sort of risks does AI introduce when it comes to automated actions, data exposure, and tool exploitation?
Yeah, well, something we talk a lot about in both Emilee's job and my job. Pretty much every day we're talking to some prospect or existing customer, and we update folks on the threat landscape a lot. And I think something to keep in mind is the tactics themselves haven't changed so much, but AI has amplified things 5-fold, 10-fold, 100-fold, right? So the tactics are very similar, but the rate in which these threat actors are executing things are much faster. So for example, take vulnerabilities, for example, software vulnerabilities. In 2023 or 2024, I forget exactly, the rate at which a vulnerability became available and the time it was exploited was 5 months. You fast forward to now, and AI has accelerated that because they're able to use these automated toolkits. So you see a vulnerability come out to be public, and the average time that it's exploited is a day and a half. So a little technical jargon there, but it's just an example of how AI is accelerating things that we've always known about. Data sprawl is another example. Data sprawl has existed since I started in this industry, but folks didn't really take it very seriously. It didn't have a lot of risk associated with that. But now when you pair this with AI, when data is that foundational layer, think of it like the first layer to a cake. It's that foundational layer. And if the data feeding these AI models, feeding these pipelines is not accurate, if it's referring to old or stale data, then the output that you get from this AI is going to be incorrect, right? So it's a lot of the same problems we've been dealing with. It's just significantly amplified by AI.
And to just add an additional piece right there, right? We talk about action. So now we think about all those risks that we now just introduced, right? Or just data and the AI piece in general. Now are we going to allow it to take action? Well, is the action that it's taking the correct action? Is that going to be the outcome that we want it to do? Is it now going to maybe expose a certain company to potentially, have inside or sensitive data now be exposed out into the world? Or, is there going to be some opportunities in there where it might delete or corrupt your actual data that you have? So, there's a lot that goes into knowing that actual data state and data foundation. But then to know what actions it's going to take is going to be the right actions is a piece that we talk to a lot of organizations about, because they're just very excited to go and implement AI in some case or shape or form within their own industry. But it's really kind of focusing it down to, well, what's the outcome that you're trying to drive to? And what's the data that you're actually feeding into it? And then how do you know the actions that you are going to allow it to take is going to be the right actions?
And of course, knowing the risks is the first step to managing them. Why do you think that's so important? Why do you think understanding and evaluating and quantifying the risks is key to building AI strategies?
So everything needs a guardrail, right? As much as we're here at RSAC, so we're here to talk about security. We're here to talk about the threat landscapes. And AI is just another one of those landscapes. But now we have to think about the other portion of what we used to always plan for. We used to plan for an operational resilience, some type of disaster, whether that's going to be a tornado, natural disaster, fire, flood, or blood is what we used to say. Those are very easy to plan for. And then when cyber threats started to loom around, now we had to think about external factors, threat actors gaining access, encrypting, exfiltrating, corrupting the data itself. Well, now we have this whole role of AI that's coming in. And the portion with the AI side of things is that it's not just internal, potential risk that you face, but also the identities. So if we have non-human identities that can now take action based off of broad sets of permissions, and they have accesses to different parts of APIs, and they can execute against these different workflows, well, now that becomes another area in which we have to make sure we're identifying those risks and making sure that we're building, for lack of a better word, disaster recovery planning based off of what we're seeing from an AI landscape today.
Yeah, well, no, there's not much I can add to that. It's perfectly well said. But to your point about operation resilience versus AI resilience, I mean, the whole point why clients had protection and restoration and DR plans in place to begin with was because folks like us would make a mistake. It was a human mistake. Well, you fast forward to now and you can multiply that literally by 82, because they say there's 82 non-human identities per human identity in organizations, in terms of the mistakes they're going to make. I think there's a lot of hoopla, for lack of a better word, of cyber attackers using AI to cause malicious activity. And certainly that is and is going to happen. But it's the accidental mistakes that are going to be happening every day. You're going to read about in the news every day of these agents having accidental damage that causes businesses time and resources and money, and ultimately better preparing for that, understanding those risks, understanding those privileges that they have, access to sensitive data that they have, is what's going to better prepare you to respond.
And you both mentioned quality of data earlier. Good decisions need good data. Why do you think that is? Why does the success of an AI initiative depend on context, quality, and of course, accessible data?
Well, a simple analogy I like to always use is it's no different than the ingredients you give a chef. If you give a chef a bunch of spoiled, rot ingredients, which is a tie into rot data, but if you give a chef spoiled ingredients and tell them to go make you a cake or make you something, then the cake's not going to taste very good because they can only do with what they're given. And it's literally the exact same way with AI. At the end of the day, that data is that foundational layer. If you're feeding it incorrect data, poor quality data, et cetera, then the output that you're going to get is going to be a poor outcome.
And don't get us wrong, there's an opportunity to leverage the data. The amount of data that humans consume and create is ginormous, right? And so there's a great opportunity for us to take that data and leverage it for our competitive advantage. The problem is that if you never actually spent the time to do good data hygiene, meaning we are tagging, we are qualifying, we are adding those additional context pieces in there, well, if you try to go and build something off that type of foundation that hasn't been, a solid foundation, well, your outcome is just going to be not the best, right? We say garbage in, garbage out. It's going to be the same. You cannot do an expectation of this is going to be excellent quality or we are going to get the right outcome that we want if the data that you're giving it is not, it's old, it's stale, and it doesn't matter to the actual objective that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. So oversight can help catch problems early. We see a lot of organizations develop these AI committees. Talk to how these committees can help evaluate projects before they're thrown into the wild.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start. So there was an organization that I met with 2 weeks ago, and they have an AI committee that operates every quarter. So essentially, they wanted to give power to their employees to say, let's make sure that if we are doing anything from an AI agent perspective or AI project, that we have different leads, different stakeholders that are actually going to lead the initiative and have those conversations. So if it's something that we're going to run for our accounting firm, well, let's make sure the lead person for accounting is going to be involved in the entire project so that they're aware of what it is that we're building. They're aware of what is the outcome that it's going to achieve and how is this going to help their specifically team inside of that firm. And then we can continue to put some additional guardrails on it, like third-party testing. Well, if it's handling financial data, which could include credit cards, account numbers, monetary value that's inside of these accounts, let's make sure that we are doing the right due diligence and we are pulling in a third party to do pen testing on it. Make sure that there's no exposures that this could potentially leak. And every time we do find something that's been identified as a risk or a gap, they immediately go to try to fix it. So they're continuously doing this every single quarter. They're surfacing up what are these new risks, what are these new projects that they're trying to deliver on, and they're bringing in a third party to help them. So the guardrails, again, they're still leveraging the innovation strategy of driving fast, but they're putting in some additional best practices in there to do some additional checks.
Yeah, I just add real quick to that. That's a great example, and to your point, I'm honestly impressed how many organizations I meet with that do have AI committees and have a process in place. But I do see a couple blind spots that are common. I don't see certain questions being asked. For example, what's the blast radius? If this AI system, if this AI pipeline model goes wrong or there's an accident, what's the blast radius this could have and impact the organization? How do we recover from that, right? So I think there's some additional questions and blind spots these AI committees could feed into, these monthly, quarterly meetings that Emilee pointed out to, and they'll be much better prepared.
Good point. So do you see other sort of ways that these committees fall short?
So some of them not including stakeholders. They're not including the heads of the different departments. There was one organization that I'm sitting at the same table. One's talking about their every quarterly meets. The other one's saying, oh, we have an AI committee too, but we also gave access to Claude Code to all, 10,000 employees. And we told them to just go out there and start building. And they could be people that have never, done a line of code of their entire life, but now all of a sudden they're creating these agents that have access to who knows what data, right? And they want them to fail fast. And it's, again, like there's a nice barrier, there's a balance that we have to kind of walk when it comes to, how do we want to innovate? How do we innovate safely? And then, what are going to be the competitive advantages that we're going to gain to it, right? So they were taken away from the conversation at the table. Oh, okay, so if we could set up some quarterly meetings, if we can involve all the right stakeholders, we could still do this of driving towards this project, but maybe we can have a little bit more control over it versus just giving everybody full access to Claude Code and letting them do what they want with it.
Well, lots of great insight there. Thank you so much, Brad, Emilee.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your time and
thank you.
perspectives. And thanks so much for watching. For IS&G, I'm Anna Delaney.